Hello and welcome to the finale review of Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 10, The Winds of Winter. Winter has finally come. Wow. We said last week that the Battle of the Bastards was perhaps the best episode of Season 6 so far. I would say that Episode 10 is possibly the best finale of any series I have seen ever. It encompassed so much and we visited so many of the major characters, but unlike earlier on in this season and sometimes in the past seasons, it didn't feel like we were doing them injustice. It didn't feel like we were just touching base, moving on. It felt what we saw, even if it was only for a short few minutes, felt necessary, felt meaty. There was no useless scenes in this show at all. Every second of every scene in this episode meant something and was needed. I mean, let's kick off with King's Landing, obviously. I mean, what an opening. I mean, the silence, slow build of the music, the piano, the way people were getting dressed. It has been mentioned in a couple of other places I've noticed, but it felt like almost like a mob film. You know, like the way Cersei went about it was like a mob hit. She was taking out all of her enemies. But in those opening few minutes where you're seeing everyone getting on their smart clothes, their posh dresses, you know, going to the church, entering the church, the sept filling up with all these lords and ladies who were there to see the trial of Cersei Lannister and Loras Tyrell. Now obviously he's the opening act. Loras is the opening act, and he confesses to all of his sins and states that he wants to try and seek forgiveness by serving the church from that point on, and has his forehead carved very nicely with a knife right in front of you, despite his father Mace Tyrell trying to stop him and trying to surge from the crowd to stop him, and is held back by Kevan Lannister. Loras, he's a sorry figure from what he used to be. He used to be the Knight of Flowers, one of the best knights, if not the best knight, in Westeros, and this is what he's become now, a bedraggled, beaten, surrendered person who has given up his life to the High Sparrow because of what the High Sparrow is putting through. But he still has Margaery, who tries to save him at the end. But while we're watching this, Margaery points out to the High Sparrow, where's Cersei?
Cersei understands the consequences of her absence, and she is absent anyway, which means she does not intend to suffer those consequences.
Where's Tommen? Well, Tommen can't actually leave his rooms right now because there's a mounting in his doorway. It makes you wonder, though, if he had have actually left his room when his attendant had first turned up to summon him, would he have been in the sept? Would he have blown up? I'm assuming he should have gone at that point, but he stayed, and the attendant left and closed the door. The next person to come in was the mountain to stop him leaving the room. So either way, Tommen dies. It was just the manner of his death. Because I've been saying for a few episodes now that I was prophesizing that Cersei would blow up some of King's Landing with the wildfire and accidentally kill Tommen. So fulfilling the prophecy of Maggie the Frog, who she saw when she was a young girl, who said that all of her children would die before her. So if he had have left when the first attendant had arrived at his room, then I would have been proved right. I suppose I was sort of like 50% right. She did use the wildfire to destroy her enemies, and Tommen did die because of that. So, yay me, I'm taking that as a win for me. Very rare for me to get those things right, but I'm going to take that one as a win. But the way Cersei is standing in her room watching as the wildfire explodes underground, and that amazing CGI effect, and how all of her enemies die in that one huge blast, and she's just standing in the Red Keep watching, sipping wine, that smile on her face, thinking, yes, I've done it, I've killed all my enemies, Tommen's still alive, everything's right with the world. Jaime will be back soon. Excellent. But unfortunately, she doesn't go to check on on Tommen. Tommen is alone in his room, watching the explosion, knowing Margaery, the love of his life, his young life, has now died. Knowing it was probably because of his mother, because he knows what his mother's like, and he knows the hatred she had for Margaery, and he knows how conniving and manipulative she is. And he knows that he's not in a good book because of what he did last episode, stopping the trial by combat. So her trial, she would have had no option but to commit her sins, to confess her sins. If she had tried to deny it all, she would have gone down anyway. So he knew, and I think because he had been so manipulated since he got the crown, he's so young, that he just couldn't take it anymore. And I think seeing Margaery go was just too much for him, and that was why we see him just walk to the window, stand, and then just throw himself out that window. I mean, that was it was a breathtaking scene, because when we see him walk away from the window, but the camera stays on the window for at least a minute with nothing happening. You know, everyone's thinking, why are we watching this window? Something's got to be happening here. And then we hear him put the crown down off screen, and then he walks back, and you just know. But it's happening so fast that it doesn't really register until after he's gone. He just walks up to the window, steps up, looks down, and goes. And he doesn't even stop and think about it. There's no hesitation. He just walks and throws himself out. But when you think about it, we've been complaining that Tommen is too young, has been a weak king, and he's been manipulated by just about everybody in the court. This, despite the fact that it's his suicide, this is the most strong decision he has made on his own in the entire show since he's been around. To actually make this decision, this life-changing, life-ending decision to kill himself. I mean, that shows guts. That's, this kid has been messed about, as I said, by everyone, but to actually do that to himself, to throw himself out that window, that's the strongest decision he has ever made on his own, and look where that led him. And so Cersei has now lost her final child, I say as prophesied, because of her actions. If she hadn't have done that, Tommen would still be alive. If she had have gone to Tommen before the blast, if she had been there with him when it happened, Tommen would probably still be alive. But she wanted that moment of vengeance. She wanted to feel that moment of raw pleasure at having killed off all of her enemies as she saw it. But let's look at who we did lose in that explosion. The High Sparrow is gone. Lancel is gone. Loras is gone. Margaery Tyrell, the Queen, she's dead. Her father, Mace Tyrell, he's dead. Kevan Lannister, the Hand of the King, he's dead. So we've lost a load of major characters in that one explosion. And although Cersei at the end of it comes out on top. She is crowned queen, because there literally is probably no one around now to who else they can crown. What is she the queen of? I mean, we see her sitting at the Iron Throne at the end, and everyone's looking up at her and saying, "Long live the Queen," but nobody in that room looks particularly happy. And although it's the last scene in King's Landing, and we see Jaime has just arrived, and he's still in his armour, he's still scruffy, he's unkempt, he's still in his travel clothes, and is rushed into King's Landing, seeing the smoke, and he's got there literally just as she's being crowned, and that look they share.
Long may she reign.
You know, it makes you wonder, is she going the way of the Mad King? I mean, there is some vague speculation that somewhere down the line her parentage could be in question, that perhaps she was a daughter of Aerys the Mad King. I don't think that's possible. I honestly don't. And even if it is, I don't think they'll put it in the show. I don't think they've got time to inject that now. But even so, the power does seem to have gone to her head, and she's got nothing else to live for. Her kids are now all dead. The only person in the world that she loves is Jaime. And the way he was looking at her at the end, my other prophecy that he was going to leave her because when he finds out what she's done, I'm thinking early next season something's going to kick off between these two, because he's going to find out she was behind that explosion. And when he finds out that she did that she was responsible for blowing up the Sept, I mean, killing Marjorie, the Tyrells, fine, but she also killed Kevin Lannister, their uncle. I mean, okay, they weren't getting along, but she still killed a Lannister. And her actions caused the death of his last remaining child, Tommen. How can he forgive her for that, after all the crap, crazy stuff that she's pulled over the years, and he's been loyal to her all the way through it? How can he forgive her when her actions cost him the life of his remaining child? Add to that, in the back of his head, he's probably remembering when he was with Brienne and how he felt when he was with Brienne. I honestly feel that through this season, through the last few seasons, ever since they met, he has been trying to live up, to be a better man, to be a better knight, because of Brienne's influence on him. So is this all going to come to a head? Is he going to say, no, this is it, this is the last straw, I've had it? And in a fit of rage maybe, and this is pure out there prophecy, but there is that prophecy on the show that Cersei will be killed. Maggie the Frog prophesied that she would be killed by, I think it was the Volonka, I think that's what they call it, the Volonka, but which translates to younger brother. Now that could mean Tyrion, but it could also mean Jaime, because although they're twins, Cersei was born first. So Jaime is technically her younger brother. So when he finds out that she is responsible for the death of Tommen in a fit of rage, will he kill her? He killed the last king, he killed the Mad King, Aerys, because he'd gone nuts, he's gone mad and was threatening to blow up King's Landing. Will Jaime kill Cersei because of what she's done? If not, I honestly think that this will be it, and he'll just abandon her and head north, perhaps to find Brienne. I don't know. But anyway, where Cersei is right now, she is queen of King's Landing. That's about it. Let's boil it down. She has made enemies of the Tyrells, the Sand Snakes, pretty much all of the North. Her only ally that we keep hearing about were the Freys, and thanks to Arya later on in this episode, they're no longer a problem. So she's got, in the south, she's got the Sand Snakes and the Tyrells who are coming for her. In the north, Jon Stark's just been proclaimed King of the North, so they're not going to be helping her. And to the east, we've got Daenerys and all her forces coming in. She's totally surrounded by enemies, and all she's got is King's Landing, the Lannister army probably, and the small Kingsguard. That's it. That's all she's got. So how long can she honestly survive? She's got nothing to give anyone to make an ally of them. The only person who's out there who might come to her rescue in some form is Euron from the Iron Islands. But he's still off building his 1,000 ships. And even if he does turn up, Daenerys can take those ships out with her dragons. So will he be of much use to Cersei? We'll have to wait and see. But we also lost Pycelle, Grandmaster Pycelle in this episode. Now that's not a big loss. Nobody really likes Grandmaster Pycelle. He's playing the game. He's trying to keep everyone happy while still floating behind the scenes, getting all the power he can. So was his time up? Yeah. But what a way to go, stabbed to death by all those kids. And Qyburn just sort of like standing there saying, well, to bring in the new, we've got to get rid of the old. So, sorry mate, but you gotta go. That was a terrible death for anyone. But to be knifed to death by loads of little kids, oof. But one thing that did occur to me after the show had finished and I was thinking about it, it's almost like the Stark-Lannister storylines had almost gone full circle. In the first episode of Season 1, Jaime pushes Bran out of a window to kill him. And in this episode, Jaime's son, Tommen, throws himself out of a tower window and kills himself. So it's almost justified in a way. When you look at it like that, it's like the Starks lost, well, not lost, but almost lost one of their sons because of Jaime, pushed him out of a tower window, and now Jaime does lose his son because his son throws himself out of a tower window. So it's almost gone, like full circle in prophecy. So it's like this was meant to happen. I mean, that was for an opening scene, for an opening start to any episode, anywhere, any show. Wow. The Winterfell, we find Melisandre in trouble. Davos is after her blood, and let's face it, he's got good grounds to. I mean, he loves Shireen, as he states, like one of his own, like his own daughter. And to find out that she had died, tied to a stake, and burnt because Melisandre had prophesied this is the only way that Stannis was going to get his army out that snow. And that's a hard thing to take. I mean, does it matter that Melisandre was right, and the morning after Shireen was burnt at the stake, the snow melted, and Stannis' army could reach Winterfell? Doesn't matter to Davos, but he wasn't there at the time, so he doesn't know the situation per se. But it's like Melisandre said, it wasn't just her. Shireen's dad agreed to it, Shireen's mother agreed to it. She said this is the only way it's going to happen. And Stannis Baratheon decided that, okay, he will sacrifice his daughter to save his soldiers and get to Winterfell. So he made the decision. Yes, Melisandre stated this will be a good thing to do and this will solve your problem, but Stannis still made the decision. So I get why Davos is after Melisandre's blood. But as she states, with the war in the north coming and the Whites and the White Walkers coming down from the north, Jon's going to need her. And I think Jon knows that. I think that's why he didn't kill her. I think that's why he just banished her. Because he knows at some point he might still need Melisandre around when the White Walkers get there. So I think that was a smart move on Jon's part. But then we see Jon and Sansa up on the battlements watching Melisandre ride away.
I'm having the Lord's Chamber prepared for you. You're the Lady of Winterfell. You deserve it.
You should take it.
I'm not a Stark.
And they have that little talk, and Sansa's apologising for not telling Jon about Littlefinger's army. And I'm thinking, oh God. I was just thinking, Jon, come on, this is your time. Shout at her. Tell her what an idiot she was. And he just goes, yeah, well, that's fine, I understand, but we've got to start trusting each other because we've got too many enemies and we can't fight amongst ourselves. I mean, everyone's accusing Jon of being naive. And I really didn't want to believe it, because I love Jon's character, but considering everything he's been through, he should be more on the ball than this. She kept a huge army from him until the very last second, and the only reason he survived was because they turned up in time. If she had just told him they were there, everything would have been different, the battle would have been different, the amount of lives saved, yeah. And all he says is, oh, don't worry about it, but we've got to trust each other from now on. I'm like, come on, she just needs a good slap upside the head, for Christ's sake. But he lets her get away with that. But there was that a slight humorous moment when he's just about to walk away and she says, oh, by the way, we've got a white raven from the Citadel to tell us that winter has arrived. And Jon sort of like looks up and there's snow falling all around him. He just smiles and gives a little laugh and says, well, Father did promise that. And it's true, Ned Stark was telling everyone winter is coming. Well, it's finally here, so well done, Ned Stark. Makes me wonder who Melisandre might meet heading south. I mean, will she join up with the Brotherhood of Banners and meet Thoros? It could be interesting. A red priestess meeting a red priest. We'll see how those go. But she might meet up with Arya. If she's heading south, she's going to come up probably to the twins. So it's possible they're going to be in the same area. So what would happen the second time she meets Arya? How will that meeting go down? If all else fails, I suppose she could keep heading south and join up with Daenerys when she finally arrives at Westeros. But then we get to the big meeting in the Grand Hall, and everyone's shouting and saying what to do next, and it's like having another bash at the wildlings, saying, well, we've been fighting wildlings forever, and now they've suddenly, got over the wall and they're here. And Tormund is like, well, actually, we didn't invade, we were invited in. So, good point. But it falls again to Lady Lyanna Mormont, the young child, the young girl, to stand up and put everyone in their place. I mean,
we know no king, but the king in the north whose name is Stark. I don't care if he's a bastard. Ned Stark's blood runs through his veins. He's my king, from this day until his last day.
She has been the highlight of this season. Everyone loves her. Nobody's got a bad word to say about this girl. Her character is fantastic. The way she puts these older guys in their place, and they all look sheepish, and they're like looking down at their feet as she tells them, how dishonourable they are for not joining the Starks, the Manderleys, the Glovers. How they all forsake their oaths to the Starks by not joining them at the battle against Ramsay. And then the Manderleys stand up and state that, okay, they should have joined Jon and Sansa, it's a mistake. And then he draws his sword and kneels and proclaims Jon King of the North, and then the Glovers do the same thing, and then everyone's shouting, King of the North, King of the North.
The King in the North! The King in the North!
And makes you wonder about Sansa. Because when they were up on the battlements, Jon and Sansa were talking, and they were like, well, you should be in charge. And Sansa was like, well, no, you should be in charge. And Jon was like, well, no, I've got the big bedroom set up. You're the Lady of Winterfell, you're in charge. But when everyone's in the hall declaring Jon King of the North, and he looks down at Sansa and she's smiling up at him. And then when he's not looking at her, she's still got a smile on her face. But then she noticed Littlefinger at the back of the hall and the look on Littlefinger's face. Now, earlier they had been in the gardens by the Weirwood, and they'd had that chat, and Littlefinger had finally confessed to Sansa that his ambition is to be sitting on the Iron Throne with her as his queen. And although she rebuffs him at that point, he has now basically laid out his plans to her. This is what he wants to be. He wants to be in charge. He wants to be the king. And for Jon to be declared King of the North, it's going to put a crimp in his plans. And I think that look when Sansa looks over to him and he looks at her, and he looks annoyed. This is messing with my plans. I don't need this. You're supposed to be in charge of Winterfell, and then we marry, and then I go on from there. not your brother. Your brother shouldn't be king of the North. Well, you know. So I think Sansa's possibly worried about what Littlefinger's now going to do. I mean, is he going to try and kill Jon? If he does, that puts Sansa in charge. Or is Sansa out for her own good? Is she perhaps herself annoyed that Jon has been proclaimed King of the North and everyone's ignoring her? The fact that she brought Baelish's army to the fight, and the only reason they're all alive and having that meeting is because of her. It's a very enigmatic moment. You really can't tell. I mean, I'm just assuming from what I did see that the smile on her face when Jon was proclaimed King of the North looked genuine. And the look of worry when she saw Littlefinger's expression looked genuine. But that doesn't mean anything in Game of Thrones. Next season it could all change and we could find out she's a conniving bitch who's just out for her own and she'll do Jon in herself. Then we catch up with Walder Frey and Jaime, who are celebrating their victory at Riverrun. Another funny scene. I mean, Bronn and Jaime get a couple of moments alone, you know, sitting at the table, drinking, eating, and Jaime points out the two women who were looking over at them, and Bronn is like, "Nah, they're checking you out. They're not checking me out." And Jaime's like, "No, they're not my type. I'm not interested in them." And Bronn sort of like grins at him and says, "What? Not blonde enough for you?" I mean, let's face it, who could get away with insinuating Jaime's incest with Cersei and still live? But Bronn can. Bronn can get away with a joke like that, and Jaime just sort of like smiles it off. And not only that, calls the women over, and then plays up Bronn and tells them both how great Bronn is, and Bronn ends up going away with them. So him and Bronn obviously have this friendship now, which is really, really good to see. They really do play off each other fantastically. And it's great to see that Jaime's got this guy that he can have just a bit of fun with. It's not too serious. That also puts him in his place, because Bronn isn't a brown noser. He's not licking up to Jaime. He'll tell him exactly what he thinks. And he doesn't care, because he knows he can get away with it now. He knows they have that relationship, that he doesn't have to be a yes man. And Jaime's cool with that. On the flip side of that, when Walder Frey sits down and starts talking about how everyone fears the Freys and how him and Jaime are so much alike because they're Kingslayers, because Walder Frey had Robb Stark killed the King of the North, and Jaime obviously killed the Mad King Aerys, so they're obviously Kingslayers. And Jaime slams him down by saying, well, we're actually nothing alike. Because, let's be honest, nobody fears the Freys, everyone fears us, the Lannisters, and if we have to keep coming north to defend you, to support you, then really what do we need you for? Before he ups and walks away, leaving Walder Frey alone. I mean, wow, what a put down. But at the end of that sequence, that scene at the Twins, when Walder's sitting all alone in that huge hall and is being served some meat pie, and it turns out that that's Arya, in disguise, serving him his two sons, baked in a pie. I mean, wow, what a comeuppance. We've been waiting for Walder Frey to get it ever since the Red Wedding. And for Arya to be the one to do it. And not only kill him, but to cut the man's throat, just as her mother died.
My name is Arya Stark. I want you to know that. The last thing you're ever going to see is a Stark smiling down at you as you die.
But it's another one of those times where how the hell did Arya get over there so fast? People are trying to defend the way the show's timeline works by saying, oh, well, you got to remember in the books, you had two big books that were running concurrently, so the timeline's going to be a little bit out, a little bit weird. Well, no, because this is a TV program. This isn't the books. Yes, you can get away with it in the books, but a TV show should have a fluid, concurrent timeline. You shouldn't be able to jump from Essos to Westeros to get into the Twins and kill Walder Frey in one episode. I mean, somebody put a perfect example. Sam and Gilly's baby is still a baby. From the moment we met her when they were north of the wall and Sam saved her and brought her south of the wall, He was a baby then, he's a baby now. And yet, in the same amount of time, Bran has aged about 5 years. Yeah, time's just not making any sense in this show. People are dotting about the place like they've got transporters or jetpacks, and it's just not. It just makes it silly, and it does pull you out of the narration, out of the show a little bit. When you, I mean, at the time you're caught up in the action, you're caught up in the scene, and we're all cheering when Arya sort of like pulls her face off and tells Frey who she is, and then cuts his throat, and that look on her face when she's holding his head still, and he's just gushing all that blood, it's like satisfaction, because she was there at the Twins when the Red Wedding went down, so she saw what happened. So that's another one off her list. But I just wish they'd get around this timeline thing a little bit, do something a little bit more sensible. I mean, there must be a way of doing it, but it was still an incredibly satisfying scene. But the only problem was we jumped from Arya holding Walder Frey's head and cutting his throat to the next amazing scene, Sam walking into a library. Yeah. Really? Did we really have to spend 5 minutes with Sam and Gilly at the Citadel, and all it is him walking into a library? I mean, it's a fantastic library. I mean, it's wow. I mean, I would personally love to spend some time in there. I'm just saying, considering this episode, those 5 minutes could have been spent on something far more important. I don't know whether they threw that in there just to split up all the heavy narration, all the heavy scenes that were going on. They didn't want it to be completely like that all the way through the episode. And they just thought, we'll throw in a bit of Sam and Gilly, that'll lighten things up a bit. Which it does, but it sort of like breaks the... To me, at least, it felt like I was on a roll. I was in a mood. You know how you get into a feeling for a series, a show, when you're watching it, and it sucks you in, and you're going in a particular direction, and you're fine with it. Then all of a sudden, it like bang, you're out of that because you've got some jokes, some one-liners, and some light stuff, and then wait, you're right back in it again without even knowing it. And it's just rather jarring. We didn't need the Sam. In fact, we haven't needed Sam this entire season. He could have done a Bran, just sat it out, and none of us would have been probably that upset by it. So yeah, let's not worry about Sam for now. Let's forget about that one, because it really didn't do anything. What did do something, however, which was quite interesting, is the Dornish scene. We're back at Dorne, admittedly once again only for about 5 minutes. But we see Olenna Tyrell, the Queen of Thorns, in black, obviously mourning for the loss of her son and her granddaughter and her grandson. And she's down in Dorne talking to the Sand Snakes, banging out an alliance. And after she's put the younger Sand Snakes in their place, and she's just speaking with Valeria now, they're talking about an alliance. And, you know, Olenna admits, I'm not interested in survival anymore. All my children are dead. You know, there are no heirs left for House Tyrell. I just want revenge. And who should come out of the shadows but Varys? So obviously, I was right. Varys had gone to Dorne to talk about an alliance between Daenerys and the Sand Snakes, which made perfect sense. But now we've got Daenerys, the Sand Snakes, and the Tyrells all on the same side. But then we get the jetpack problem again, because in the last scene of the show, we had Varys on the ship with Daenerys, Tyrion, Grey Worm, Missandei, and all of them heading for Westeros. How the hell did he get back out there to get on the ship to be heading back again? It just... What we do see, though, back up beyond the wall again, we see Benjen dropping off Bran and Meera within sight of the wall. He can't go any closer because of the magical spells on the wall, we find out, which stop the dead getting too close. And Bran decides to log into a close-by weirwood tree. And we go back to the Tower of Joy in Dorne, and that flashback sequence of the young Ned Stark going to rescue his sister Lyanna from the tower. And we see Lyanna in the bed, having given birth to a baby boy, bleeding out, about to die, and we see her get Ned to promise her to protect the kid, because otherwise we're assuming Robert, it makes perfect sense, will kill the baby, because Robert's not going to want the son of Rhaegar Targaryen hanging around. It doesn't matter if it's Lyanna's son or not. Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna Stark, his proposed wife. Robert and Lyanna were going to marry until Rhaegar kidnapped her. That's what started the whole war. So, as far as Robert's concerned, Rhaegar raped Lyanna Stark, and this baby is the result. So he's going to kill the baby. So Lyanna makes Ned promise to keep the baby safe.
Promise me, Ned. Promise me.
And so, as we already pretty much figured out, that's Jon Snow. And we now know for sure, because we saw it on screen for all those people who don't read the books, that Ned was lying to his wife Catelyn all this time, that he didn't have an affair, that the son, that Jon Snow isn't his baby, isn't his son. So he's been honourable, but he basically lied to his family for that entire time. And then finally, we head off to Meereen. As I say, this episode, although it was longer, I think it was like an hour 10 or an hour 15, had a lot to touch on. So we did have a lot of scenes with like 5 to 10 minutes in each place. And so we didn't get a lot other than the 20-minute opening in King's Landing, which was the big point. And obviously at Winterfell, we probably got about 15-20 minutes there. But the rest of it was just touching base with 5 to 10 minutes quickly, which is why the end of the show was really like bang, 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 one scene after another. But we finished back in Meereen, where we find Daenerys and Daario Naharis having a heart-to-heart, and Daenerys saying to him basically, you can't come with me to Westeros. I can't have my lover with me in Westeros. I've got to come over. I've got to appear to be a single queen in the hopes that I can ally myself with the king through marriage. And if you're hanging around, that's going to make it almost impossible. And Daario figures out that this was Tyrion's advice, that she do this. And although that's true and it was Tyrion's advice, it does make sense, because if she does come over to Westeros, which she's obviously doing, and she wants to ally herself with a king, Jon maybe, Jaime even maybe, but Jon is number one on my list. Even though they are cousins, I think they'll work out being. But even so, that isn't going to work too well if Daario's sniffing around all the time. So for him to stay in Meereen and look after things over there, she said that, I've left you orders, written orders, what I want you to carry out. They've renamed Slavers Bay to Dragon's Bay, but Daario gets left behind. And he takes it pretty well, really. I mean, he says, he's full of remorse and he's going to miss her and all this, but he doesn't get mad, and he just leaves. And she eventually heads down to the Grand Hall and speaks to Tyrion, who asks how he took it and how Daario took it. But we find out that it was Tyrion's idea. But they have a really nice chat, and it's nice to see their relationship, because together they make a dynamite team.
I'd swear you're my sword, but I don't actually own a sword.
It's your counsel I need.
Tyrion is the perfect king's hand. He's been king's hand once before, but it was almost like it was forced upon him. Tywin Lannister was out fighting wars, so he basically made Tyrion king's hand in his place until he got back. So Tyrion didn't have much of a choice. And let's face it, the king, he was the hand who was Joffrey. Who would want that position? But in this scene, obviously they have that chat, and he says, I've been told all my life that I should have faith in things. I should have faith in religion. I should have faith in family. I should have faith in friends. And then he looks at him and he says, I do have faith in you. And she makes him her hand. She gives him that badge, the king's hand lapel badge thing, and puts it on him. And you can almost tell he's almost in tears. You know, and he bows before her, he kneels before her. And I think all of his life he's been looking for something like this. A little bit like Jaime. Jaime's been floating through life, as I said previously on another episode. Jaime's been floating through life looking for someone or something to believe in, to get behind, to make him the man he wants to be. And all he's really had is Cersei, but that really hasn't worked out for him too well. He was part of the Kingsguard for King Aerys, the Mad King. That didn't work out too well for him. And ever since then, he's been getting crap off of his dad, Tywin Lannister. Cersei's been messing around with him. He's been losing his kids. He's just been pushed from pillar to post. And I think Brienne is the light that's leading him to a better Jaime. Equally, Daenerys seems to be having that effect on Tyrion. He has found himself. He knows what he wants now. He knows himself. He knows what he is, and he knows what he is good at. And he is good at giving solid advice, and he's very wise. So yeah, he drinks a lot, he tells rude jokes, but he's also a fantastic king's hand, and this time he wants the position, which is why he's almost in tears when she pins that badge to him. He wants to be here, he wants to help her, and he wants to make her Queen of Westeros, because he thinks she will make the best ruler for Westeros. He honestly does believe that, which is why he's so invested in it. That's a fantastic scene. And then we end the episode by seeing all of Daenerys' ships, hundreds of them by the look of it, all different types. I noticed there was at least 3 or 4 different types there, all at sea, heading out of the bay, heading for Westeros, with the dragons flying over them, and that final panning shot of the lead ship where we see Varys and Grey Worm and Missandei and Tyrion, and Daenerys just standing there with a smile on her face looking out to sea. End credits. Roll credits. So what does this say for season 7? I thought the next 2 seasons were 6 episodes each, but I'm reliably now informed that next season will be 7 episodes and the last season will be 6 episodes. What is going to happen in season 7? Are we going to see the wall fall as the Night's King and the White Walkers finally get there? Or are they going to hold that back for season 8? Is season 7 perhaps just going to be the battle, the war in Westeros between Dany's forces, the Sand Snakes, the Tyrells versus the Lannisters? What's going to happen up north? Is Jon going to come south and take part in that war, or is he just going to let them fight it out down there, and he's going to concentrate on perhaps reinforcing Castle Black and the wall and getting forces up there for when the Night Walker, the White Walkers and the Night's King finally arrive? Surely that must be uppermost in his mind, because he knows, as do more of the kings of the houses of the north. They know the White Walkers are coming. So yes, you've got the other kingdoms fighting in the south, but they've got to know. I mean, after Hardhome, Jon knows how close those White Walkers are. He's going to have to be, in the back of his mind, he's going to be thinking, I've got to reinforce the wall. There's only like 40 guys up there. It's like a 300-mile wall. I've got to do something to reinforce that. So we're going to start season 7 by him sending some of the houses north to reinforce Castle Black. You know, but then what about the South? How far north is he going to let that war come? You know, Cersei, as I said earlier, hasn't got much forces to work with. So what is she going to do? Is she going to let them lay siege to King's Landing? Or when Dany turns up with the dragons, that's not really going to help her out. The dragons will just firebomb the place. So it's all going to be up in the air, but I'm looking forward to some huge battles. So I really hope HBO gives these guys the finance, the funding they need to give us what we need to see. But I really do think it's going to come to a head with Cersei and Jaime, and I do think that Jaime's either going to kill her or leave her and head north. And obviously, what's going to happen? Will Jon and Dany meet up? Will they marry? Will he find out that he's actually a Targaryen? Will Bran get over the wall? Because at the moment, Bran's the only one who now knows. Everybody else who knows Jon's heritage is dead. So Bran's the only one who knows. Oh, well, unless Harlan Reed's still alive. We assume he's dead. He might still be alive, so he would know. But otherwise, everybody else is dead, and Bran's the only one who's seen that, and that's in the vision. So if he pops up and goes, "Hey, bro, good to see you. I've got this really great story. Just want to tell you, you know all that stuff about Ned Stark being your dad? Yeah, nah, not so much." So, you know, that's all to come. So it's going to be a long year waiting for the next season of Game of Thrones to appear. And I'm going to really miss doing these reviews because I love talking about it. And, you know, I just wish I had more people to talk about it too, because it's not just me and my wife and that's about it. So there's me telling anyone who's listening to this, telling you guys. So I know some of these go on for a long time, and I know they're a lot longer than other reviews. And I know it's probably because, it's not because I like listening to myself, it's because I just have to get all of this out. And I just love talking about this show. So please forgive me if they do go on very, very long, and thank you for sticking with it if you listen all the way to the end. But that's it. That's it for Season 6 of Game of Thrones. We've reached the end. This will be obviously my last review for this show until the next one rolls around. Thank you for everyone who's listened to each one of these reviews. I really do appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed it. Take care, keep safe, and watch for my movie reviews in the meantime. But as for Game of Thrones, I'll see you when Season 7 rolls around. Take it easy.